Okay. I always say okay when I start my videos. Maybe I need a different line. Anyways, we are going to do the filling here of the chocolate cake. We're going to do the whipped cream and then these bits right here. There's 3 of them, so don't confuse them with the actual cake part. So you should have already put a layer of 914, a light layer in both your whipped cream and in your centers, as per the last video. But in case you skipped that last video, you should put a nice single light layer evenly throughout each little section of filling here. Now we're going to do the filling first because it's going to be a little bit lighter than the actual cake portion. So I thought I would start with that. And because the strawberries are so much detail work, I figured we can do those in the end. Since I already did the top berry, you can kind of follow along on the top berry with the other berries, because it's the same exact concept as the one on the top of the cake. So if you are coloring along and you follow that video, you should be able to do these other 4 very easily. And you should have completed your other ribbon. So it should be the same as this ribbon. And that was already in a pretty lengthy video. So after you put your layer of 914 in, you're going to take your 928. So let's go up to the whipped cream here. And where the shaded lines are and around the berry, we're going to kind of put a little bit of a heavier coat of this 928. And we're going to go around the leaves. Anywhere you see a spot that looks darker, I want your coating of 928 to be a little bit heavier. So through the line here. So you can see I'm just following the lines that the artist has put in there. I'm not doing anything complicated, but I'm not using a heavy touch. I'm just kind of building up a layer. And then along the top. And right here at the bottom, get around that berry really good. She's got some shading here. And I'm going to go up a little bit. So where it's darker, you want to keep it darker. So I'm just going to kind of focus around the outline here. So you can see I'm just kind of outlining it a little bit. And then dab in those corners with a little bit heavier of a coat. I'm going to go around the arm. I'm not doing anything fancy. This kind of makes the color stick out a little bit. Now that I've got that heavier coat in those areas where there's some shading, I'm going to go ahead and with the lighter coat, I'm going to go over the entire whipped cream, just with a lighter coat than I did on those shaded areas. But I'm using the same color. So I'm just giving a good blend. And you should be able to see the difference in the light coat and the darker coat that you laid down. And it doesn't have to be perfectly even. Just get enough of that color on the page so that when you apply your next color, you get a good even tone. And it should be darker in those areas where you applied that darker bit of color. Okay. And this is a rather simple blend, so it's not overly complicated. So take your 914 after that, and with your 914, go over each space. So you want to coat the whole picture, that whole area, and paying attention to your lines. You should still be seeing those detail lines you drew in. But I'm just blending this 914 over the 928. Give it a nice, good, even coat. Again, I'm not doing anything complicated, so this is like probably one of the easiest parts to do. So you should have like a creamy flesh color. It shouldn't be white because we put some pink in there. Because it's a strawberry chocolate cake, so I thought I would use a little bit of a pink filling. I didn't want to do it too pink, and I didn't want to do it too white. I wanted to give it just enough of a tint that it stands up against that white paper. If you prefer to leave it white, you definitely can, but I wanted to give it a little bit of color. And again, I'm just kind of going around my edges here. I'm giving a nice good coating on there. I'm still not pressing heavy, I'm just getting that good coating. Now I'm going to take my 928 again. I'm just kind of repeating my shading lines with that pink. And you should definitely see there's a little bit of a darker area than the rest of it. It shouldn't be much difference, but just subtle. So don't panic if you don't think you got enough on there. You can always come back and put a little bit more over the top. And you can even use like 1068, which is a really light gray, to give it just a little bit more of that shading if you really need to. But I think this little bit of pink just does the trick. I'm going to go around the bottom a little bit. There. Just adding a couple little extra lines in here. There. Very simple, very elegant, nothing to it. Now that you've already got the 914 down here in your filling, you're going to take your 928 and you're going to give a good even coat across each section, paying attention to these end parts where you can put a little bit heavier coat of your 928. So I like to do those bits first. That way I know exactly where I want it just a little bit darker. And then right around some edges here. I'm just kind of putting in some heavier areas where I want it to be a little heavier. Again, this is probably one of the easier blended sections, is this filling. And then for now, I'm going to rotate this just a little bit. I think I'm going to come in here underneath the berry and apply a nice layer right around the edge where the berry's touching that filling. And I might darken that up a little bit as we do the berries. We'll see. Again, I like to apply my final detail touches in the end, because then I know kind of what I'm looking at, my overall picture, and where I could put some little touch-ups. Okay. For now, that's good. Now I'm going to go back to, still with my 928. I'm going to put a light coat of my 928 throughout the whole thing, right over top that 914, giving it a good blend. Not a heavy coat, just a light coat like you did with the whipped cream. So you're giving it just enough pink to change the color to a creamy, it's a little bit darker than the Deco pink, but mixed with this 914, you get a little bit of a different tone, because 914's got some like yellow in it. So you almost get like a little pinky orange color, which is exactly what you want. And again, I'm not pushing heavy. I'm just using small circles to go over this and fill each layer in. So each cake layer there. Just enough to get myself good and saturated. And you may, like I'm having to do here, you may have to go over it twice because you're using light layers, so don't be afraid to do that if you have to. You want just a nice even coat. I'm trying not to rub across my picture with my hand. But again, I'm at a weird angle with the camera, so. I wanted to kind of get this up the other day, but I've been preoccupied. It's been just a crazy couple weeks. You know, it seems like when things happen, everything happens, right? Okay, so I'm going to do each one. Actually, I'm going to go over here because it's easier for me. So again, all I'm doing is applying a lightly a nice coating. Get a nice even coat across the whole entire section. And of course, I don't know if you're following my color choice or you're using your own, but whatever you do, blending in small, tight, light circles. I mean, you can easily go back and forth on this, make it quicker, but you're going to see those lines in there. So that's why I recommend doing light circles, at least for your last coat. If you want to hurry and put the quick up and down motion, make sure you keep it all in one motion. So you should always keep it in the same direction, because you'll get a more even coating than if you're going up and down and then right and left. So again, now I'm going to do this bottom one. I hear Gretel in her food dish. She's mad because she wants dinner and it's early. She can't have dinner yet. She has another freaking hour and a half. The little piglet. It's not her dinner time. If I feed her early, then it gets her into a bad habit. Then she wants breakfast early. So she has to just wait. She's got dry kibble. She's not going to wither away to nothing. She's just spoiled. She wants her wet food. And she's a spoiled little monster. I was hoping that I could have weaned her off giving her canned food altogether, but it doesn't look like Little Miss Pork Chop is going to have any tolerance to me allowing that. So I'm making this bottom one just a slightly bit darker overall than the top two, because this one's up against that plate. So I want to give it just a little bit more, especially where it's touching the plate. A little more detail. I'm trying to get a nice good coat in there. And it's a pretty light pink, so I'm going to do something right around that berry. It's a little bit heavier down there. Okay, now you're going to take your 914 and you're going to go over it just like we did the little dollop of cream on top. Just going to give it a good blend with the 914, keeping it nice and even and mixing that pink and the previous layer 914, which now you should really see that peachy, orangey flesh color coming through. Just like your whipped cream or your dollop of whatever that is on the top. Frosting, whipped cream. I would think it's a type of whipped cream because it's strawberries. Fresh strawberries and whipped cream. So as you see here, it's turning that beautiful pinkish, orangish flesh color. And it's still staying a little bit deeper shaded on the ends there. Okay, do that for each one. Give it a nice good coat Again, pressing light, but still getting a nice, good, even coat on there. So once we get this done, we'll put in a little detail, and then we'll go on to the chocolate cake. And I think you'll like how I did this deep, rich, dark chocolate cake. Might be something new to you as far as blends are concerned. I don't know. You just have to give it a try. And we're going to use some darker undertones on the chocolate cake instead of the standard lighter undertones. It's going to be darker to start out with. So it kind of shows you how you can use dark or light tones when you're doing an undertone. Okay. Now this one on the bottom should be a little bit richer and a little bit darker because it's got the most shading and it's up against that plate there. That's kind of what you want. Again, I'm just kind of mixing this in with the nice light circle, and then I'm going to go over it one more time. Make sure I got a nice even coat on there. Get it nice and balanced. Come back here and get around my edges a little better, as I did that fairly quick. But again, this is one of the more easy blends, so it shouldn't take long to get these filled in. Okay, nice and even. Now I'm going to take my 928 again, and I'm just going to put a light layer around my deeper shaded spots. Just putting a little bit in there to pull the color evenly. I'm not doing anything too crazy, but you could definitely see the pink with that flesh color. Okay, now I'm going to take my 918, or excuse me, my 118, and you notice inside there that cream that looks like little dots of gray, so little air pockets. And I'm just kind of dotting. I'm not rubbing, I'm not doing circles, I'm just dotting in some of those areas. It gives the look of speckles. You see how I did that? So I'm just being very random and trying to follow some of the little points that the artist had, where she had little gray shading spots. And you should be able to do this easy enough with your Prismas if you got a good base coat under there. Just adding a couple little dots. So as you tap, it should just automatically put some color on that paper, which is another really cool trick with your Prismas because they are so soft. So hopefully you can see that. Here's Miss Gretel off to my right. So that's basically it for your filling. It's not complicated. If you want to add a couple little air dots up to your cream at the top, you can. Just gives it that nice little extra thing. Okay, so now for the chocolate cake. Start with your 996. I know, right? That's black grape. How are you going to make chocolate with that? You'll see. Now, see on the picture where there's all these different shaded areas, these deep areas that the artist had put in? With my 996, I'm being ever so gentle. And I'm putting in a nice light layer of 996 into that shading area. So this is all I'm doing. I'm not doing craziness. I'm just kind of putting some subtle lightness, some subtle dark points into the lightness of the paper, okay? Going around the outside of these individual cream areas. And I think I'm going to come down here where it's touching the plate. Get a nice dark layer there. It's still a light layer because it's fuzzy, you can tell. And I'm going to drag it up the edge of the cake. Careful, try not to get that in her arm. Don't want to mix that with her flesh. I'm going to have to turn my page here. Okay. So again, I'm going to, actually I'll start this way because now I'm at a different angle. So I'm going to, you see where that shading is there? I'm just kind of putting some of that dark grape in there. And again, it's just a light coating. And I'm just following the edge of what she already has in here. Kind of put a little on this. It's not really perfectly straight, but I don't think it's supposed to be. It's kind of a cake. Then I'm going to go up around the base of this berry where I see some shading, where I want it to be a little bit deeper. And be careful around your whipped cream, but get a nice little line under your whipped cream. So you could definitely see how I've done that there. And I think I'll put a little bit here. Not too much. Just enough for now. So basically I'm putting my base coat in. But this dark base coat is going to contrast darker when we add the other colors. Okay. And I'm going to put some right here. Right at that corner. And a little bit on the next one. Okay. I think I need a little bit more over here. Okay. Definitely think I want some in the corner of these berries, just a little bit. And then in between these two. And then I'll get this one here. A little at the bottom. It's a little bit more of a gap there. I'll put a little at the top. And a little more here. There's a little space in between the berry and the filling there. Okay. Maybe a little bit here. Okay, for now that works. So now I'm going to grab my 1082. I know it's really weird, right? And with my chocolate, I'm going to go over everything I just did with a nice coat, but I'm blending that dark 996 with my 1082, which your 1082 is your chocolate in your Prismas. So again, I'm not pushing hard because look at that tip. I'm being very gentle and I'm just following that dark line that I have from the 996. Because what this is doing is showing me my base color, and if I need to make any adjustments or not. I'm going to go around this whole berry here because this is one of the most filled in colors here, so to say. I guess the most used in this picture to get our chocolate cake. But there's more colors we'll be putting in, so you know better by now that I won't just stop at these two colors. So you can see how when I put the chocolate in on just the white, it's lighter than the area where I put chocolate over the 996. That's what you want. The two colors blend very well together. And it doesn't look purple and it doesn't look black. It just gives it that right amount of color. I need to be a little bit darker right around here. Okay. I'm going up around this line again, around her arm. But you should be able to get a nice even blend if you did light coat. So once you have your nice base coat laid in, you can make adjustments if you want to put some more in a certain area. Because remember, wherever you go darker, it's going to end up darker. Going right around that frosting there. Or that center, I guess. I mean, it could be anything you want. It could be a cream filling. It could be a jello filling. So again, I'm following this 996 I put in there previously. And you can see how it darkens when I put the 1082 over it. So you got two colors you're blending already, but then it lightens up as you hit the white paper. Okay. I'm going to get around this whipped cream here. Again, just following the lines. I know I get quiet when I concentrate. But I want to get it right. So thinking and doing these blends very carefully so that I get a nice good blend. But you can definitely see the contrast between the light and dark with the chocolate. I'm going to go around that whipped cream really good. Right around here. And now this little bit here. That's the tricky bit. Somebody outside hot rodding it with their car. Okay. I'm going to turn. And I'm going to get this little bit up here. Working around that berry. Okay. And where I put some of that 996. You can definitely see where the 996 is because it's a lot darker. I'm going to go ahead and put that light coat in of the chocolate. Trying not to blend my lines away too much. Okay. Get this corner here, up around her arm, and over that 996. So I got a good cover over the 996. Now I'm going to go up to the lighter area. Okay. Now below it, so below the area where you put the 996, I'm just doing the lighter chocolate area. So you can still see where the 996 is, even though you went over it, but it's not so standoutish, so to say, but it will. It will be very standoutish when you get your overall colors in. A nice blend along the line here. Trying to keep it out of my filling. And if you need to come back and touch up your filling because of hand rub, don't be afraid to do that. Okay. Do this for every little bit. Being careful to get around your berries. And make sure you're still sticking with a light coat. Because we have several coats to put on. If you put on too much at once, it's going to be harder to blend your colors if you're starting to burnish your paper already. But again, it depends on how thick of a paper you're using. And I know some home printers just don't take cardstock. But you can get a pretty cheap printer that can take up to a 70-pound paper. You just have to look before you buy your printer what its paper standards are. I know so many people who don't think about that before they buy a printer, what they're using it for. Are you using it just to print documents? Or are you using it to print cards? I always look at those things because I want to know what my printer can handle. Okay, so I'm just getting around this center bit here. I'm going to need a little bit more right there. I got a little bit of that chocolate in my cream. Okay, next, following that line here around the berry. Trying to be ever so careful. Okay. Think I got it. I'm going to blend that little dark bit. Get around that berry. Okay. Perfect. Okay, that looks pretty good. So you got, you've got 2 colors down so far on your chocolate cake. You should have 996 and 1082. Now, grab your nectar, which is 1092. Nectar. Okay. And with your 1092, sorry, I had to pause for a minute. I'm going to start down here, and I'm going to put a nice blended coat basically over everything I just did. Over the 996, over the 1082, but a light coat. Don't go heavy. You should still see like bits of white paper through all of this. But you're going to notice it's going to look a little muddy, and that's all right. That's what you want. You want to blend those colors really good. But you shouldn't see any purple. You should see dark areas of chocolate brown and medium brown. Getting around that berry, being very careful. But in the same time, you should see your different colors. Like I said, you should see the contrast of the different layers of color you've already put in. So deeper shading, lighter shading. And as you can see, I'm just getting a nice even coat of the 1092. Okay. Let me get around this berry here. Along that edge. And then up top here. Where I got a little bit of that chocolate in that filling right at the corner there. Oh well, happens. Okay. You should notice your cake is starting to turn like a light brown with specks of white paper peeking through. And that's exactly where you should be. Trying to get around this arm bit here. Along that edge. I need to go down here and retouch that. Okay. Again, it's patience over everything. Because it's very tedious and time consuming to do it this way. But your finished product's very cool. Okay, so I'm going to get around the whipped cream. Trying to get around that purple line, or the 996 you put in there. Come around the edge by her arm. All right. So you can see just how those colors work together very well. Okay, I'm going to turn my page a little bit. I want to get around this berry. Okay, so I'm just blending those colors with my chocolate again in the lighter area. I'm watching some old movie on TV from the pioneer days. Don't ask, it just came on. I have all streaming TV, but it does play automatically, so I don't have to pick shows. I forget what I'm watching, but it's just playing some older movies and some newer movies. It's like a mix. Okay, getting around this filling down here. And this edge, where that darker is. I'm going to go up around the top here. Around the berry. There we go. So you can see now where I've blended over the dark, the 996, the 1082 with the 1092. But you can still see the dark contrast underneath in those certain areas. That's what you should be seeing. Make sure you do every spot that you put the 1082. So you're basically going over the whole chocolate cake portion. Because when you're done, you want it to look like a nice finished chocolate cake with like a ganache frosting on the top. That's our end goal. So again, I'm doing a light blending. Okay. Getting up here around that and underneath that filling. Okay. And then I'm going to go down here and get in between the berries where I put that darker color. I'm just kind of following that up. I'm going to blend it in. Okay. And again with this bottom one. All right. Right around that filling. And around this, in between the two berries at the bottom there. And right along the tricky bits. Where just enough of a gap in there that, of course, it's a tight fit, so. Oh, I forgot to put some chocolate in that portion, didn't I? I'm like, why does this look different? Because now I have to go in and put a little more chocolate in here. Because I forgot to put my chocolate in that section. What the heck? How did I do that? I'm like, why does that color look off? That's why. We're almost there anyway, but now I got to go over it with this color. I don't know how I managed to miss that, but I did. Okay. Excuse me. So now you see where you're at with your cool colors, okay? Where is my pencil? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, this is 943, and just right here where I left that just a little bit lighter, I'm going to mix a little 943 kind of in a little triangle shape in the center here. I'm not doing a lot. I'm just doing a little bit, as you can see there. Let me try to get this done, then I'll move my hand for you. Okay, nice little bit of 943 right there. That's kind of a bright point. And then right back here, I'm going to put a little. It'll be ever so subtle when you start doing your next layers. I know you don't think you'll notice, but it will be noticeable. Okay. And then maybe a little in here. Okay. I think that's looking pretty good. What do you think? I think it looks pretty good. Okay. I'm going to take my 996, and all I'm going to do is put a little more darker where I want it. Just a little bit more so I can really see my lines. Because your next layer is going to be even heavier. And a little around here. And this one needed some right here for sure. And right there. Be a little in this corner. It's a little here. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to take my 1082. I'm going to start to add that coat. Now this coat should be a little bit heavier, and you should be able to do it without pressing heavier. So although you're still using a light coat, you've got a couple layers of color under there now. So you should really feel the thickness of the color as you're blending. And again, this isn't your final layer, but you should be feeling with the colors underneath. You should be able to pull that color and move it around a little bit better and easier. And you're still going to see where you've got the darker color underneath, and then you move into your lighter color. You should have that nice contrast there. So see, as I'm working around that area at the bottom where I shaded it with the 996, you could definitely see where it's darker in here and here. But that chocolate, the 1082, blends with it so nicely. And I'm just going up around these edges. I'm going to get around this berry here. And around the edge of the frosting. Okay. Giving a nice coat there. I'm going to get up in between. Oops. Trying to go around that berry without going in the berry. And then get my nice coat in there. And again, I'm just doing little small circles to kind of mix those colors. I find that doing the circular motion, you get a better mix with the grain of paper, and it helps to push that color into the grain of the paper. So you can see right up here at the top where the darker contrast is. You can definitely see it. Okay, go around this. That's that darker line I put in there. Now I'm going to blend underneath of it. Getting up against that filling. And I'm going to work my way up to the top. Going around that edge ever so carefully. And right over that 943. And around that whipped cream again. Trying to get around every little area. But you can still see that contrast underneath, see? You still see that dark line right there? That's what you should shoot for. Getting around this berry. And then coming down into that lower portion there. Giving a nice blend. Okay, I'm going to get up here around this berry. Around the tip of it anyway. I'm just following the edge now. I'm going right over the 996. And I'm going to go right over that 943. So I'm just kind of blending it all. Okay. Got a nice good coat in there. Do this for every section. Get a nice good coat of your 1082 over all your areas. You can see that's all I'm doing here. Okay, I'll do this little bit here at the bottom. Trying to get up underneath that, between the berry and the filling. Right along the bottom here, and then I'm going to blend. So again, I'm not pushing heavy, but because I got so many layers underneath, it's definitely moving that color. Do the center bit here. Get up underneath that filling is tricky. And around that berry. And then a nice good blend in the center portion. Okay. Same with up here. Get right down in between there and following that berry up. Okay, and give it a good blend. Okay, so that's where you should be at right now. It's really starting to look like chocolate, right? It's pretty nifty, I thought. Okay. I don't know. I'm easily amused, I suppose. It's not done. It's far from done, but the next color we're going to start with is 1092. Okay, so 1092 is our next color. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a nice, even, light coat, blending all the chocolate areas on the cake. So we're going to make sure we get a nice, good blend. We're using a light to medium pressure, but not a heavy pressure, and not full on like medium pressure either. You should be a little heavier than a light touch, but still a light touch, if I've made that clear enough. You should be getting just enough to blend away most of your white space, but you'll still see some white specks in there. And that's okay, because we have a couple more layers to do before we have our finished product. So just make sure you get a really good blend with your nectar, which is 1092. But leave enough that you can still add a couple more layers. In order to get that deep, rich chocolate look, you're going to want to layer this up and build your color profiles. So you can see I'm just kind of working in small circles. And I'm working around this cake. And I'm going right over the dark areas. Trying to get right up next to my center line there, where that filling is. Right around my edges. I'm just going to keep working every area that I've already filled in. So that you've got nice, good, even coat. And it's like I've missed a little spot right here. Okay, I got to turn my page here. So you can see how nice, rich, dark chocolate brown that's getting. That's where you want to be. You want to get that nice buildup of color. And keep in mind, it's going to look, my picture's going to look a little bit darker on camera than yours probably does in person. And that's okay. Because sometimes it's hard to tell what your color should look like versus what it's actually doing. And it's always going to be darker on camera. I've noticed that, so I just wanted to point that out. So in case yours looks lighter than mine does, you're exactly in the right place. Getting around that edge. And I'm trying to get around this filling here. And then I'm going to work my way down to the next bits. Slowly but evenly filling in each little spot here. Giving a nice, good, even blend of color. Notice I rotate my pencil. That's to try to keep a little bit of a sharp edge so I can get in these little fine areas when I need to. And if you get into the habit of rotating your pencil when you're blending, you'll always have a little bit of a sharper edge on one side than the other, which makes it a little more convenient than having to sharpen your pencil all the time. Oops. Hold on, my camera. It's probably still recording, but my camera says low battery for some reason. And it shouldn't say that because it's plugged in. I should not be getting a low battery. Let me try to do this again here. All right, I'm going to have to pause and check my... Actually, no, I don't. It should be plugged in. It'll be working just fine. There we go. Little thing, it is plugged in. If I die on you in the middle of this, I will stop, charge my phone, and we'll pick up where we left off. So I'm keeping an eye on my battery. It's plugged in, but I shouldn't have got a low battery message, but I did. So I'm charging at the same time, so maybe that's why. I'm just using too much juice. So I'm going to go around this top bit here. Want to try to get this all filled in just in case it dies. So at least we finished one section. Okay, so now that you've got a nice even coat of the nectar, just make sure that you've covered every little square bit with that nectar and you've blended your colors really well. Okay, so now you're going to take your chocolate, your 1082, and you're going to repeat this, but gently. So you don't want to go too dark, but you want to give a nice, even chocolate coat. And while you're doing this, you're really going to notice your dark areas are going to be a lot darker. And that's what you want. You want to see that contrast in those little spaces that you put that 996. And that's really good. And right now, when you're putting down your chocolate, you should really feel that color moving underneath. You should be able to blend and mix. It should be silky smooth. And you're getting to the point where your paper's going to be burnished. So one more layer and it's probably over for your paper. And it should start to take on a shiny appearance with that final burnished look. So with that final layer, you should start to really see that look, that gloss. And I know a lot of people say, how do you get that high shine? Well, this is how you get that. You build up your layers gradually. And just as you're building your layers, your paper will burnish itself automatically. So you don't have to apply hard pressure to get that burnish or that shine. It will do it after you've built up so many layers. And again, that's the beauty of the Prismacolor pencils. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to easily move color around like if you were painting with a pencil. I see I got a couple scratch marks on my page. That means Little Miss Pork Chop was probably up here walking around on it. See, I got one there and one there. Looks like perfect little kitty paws. She's such a little monster. Usually I try to cover up my picture with another picture if it's in between working on it. That way little Miss Kitty Scratcher can't use it as her sitting pad. Some reason if I have a piece of paper or a paper bag sitting around somewhere, she likes to sit right on it. It's the weirdest thing ever. She's a weird cat. I love her to bits, but boy, she's an odd bird. She's totally 100% Russian blue, though. Her personality fits that profile like you wouldn't believe. So if you know anything about Russian blue and Siamese kitties, you know what I deal with. She's a little crazy, a little lovey, a little busybody. But she's still a kitten, too. She's not even 2 years old yet. And I can't believe she's coming up on her 2-year birthday. Her and her brother, her little twin brother. Which is really cool. You rescue a couple kittens and you never really realize what you get and what their personalities are going to be until they get older. And even though Gretel's a little monster, she is adorable. And I couldn't have asked for a better kitten. She's very much my kitty. She is attached at my hip. When I leave the house for a couple hours, oh, she goes into global meltdown. I've watched her on video when I'm gone, and she sits at the door and cries. And it just breaks my heart. She doesn't do it every time I leave. She's gotten better as she's gotten older, but when she was a kitten, she took it really hard. But having my older cat, Sugar, I think Sugar's teaching her that it's okay. And Sugar's taught her some bad habits, but she's also taught her some really good, healthy habits. So that's nice. And it's kind of funny how much she has learned from my older kitty. But the bad habits she's learned are when somebody knocks on my door, they immediately run upstairs. With Sugar being a Bengal mix, I expect that from her. She's a little antisocial, and I'd rather that breed did not interact with too many people, because Bengals can be very one-sided, especially if they're in an aggressive mood, and their claws are no joke. So having a brother and sister Bengal pair, I was okay with them being antisocial. And then I lost the boy. That I took hard. He was my boy. He was my baby. He was that one kitty, that one pet that I had that literally took the stuffing out of me when he passed. And he passed very young because of an undiagnosed heart condition. So that sucked. So Sugar being 14, she's outlived him by quite a while. And she does have the same health conditions he had, but we're treating her the best we can, and she's getting comfort care basically until her time comes. It's a decision that me and my vet made, and we didn't make it lightly. So there's not much you can do for a terminally ill pet. Okay, so you see where you're at now with that really dark, rich chocolate? Okay, take your nectar and do one more coat of nectar over it. You should be just gentle pressure, blending and mixing, giving yourself a nice even coat. Now, when you're putting this nectar down, you should pretty much be covering up all those white spaces in your paper. You shouldn't see any more white space at this stage. You should be getting a nice shine with your nectar. And don't worry, we're going to put some highlights back in where that deep shading was. So don't panic, because I know putting your nectar in kind of dulls that color down a little bit. Get around your edges real nicely. Get around that berry. And for those of you who are more advanced at coloring, forgive me for explaining in detail what I'm doing, but I find that some of the newer colorists, they like to have more of that detail explained, especially with what I'm doing. So If you're more advanced and you don't need my explanation, but you're following along, just put me on mute. I don't mind and I wouldn't be offended. Sometimes I put myself on mute. But I find that when I'm doing detailed pieces or multiple color blends like this, I like to really explain what I'm doing so that others who are watching can follow along much easier. Because I know sometimes it's hard to really see what somebody's doing or how hard of a pressure they're putting and what exactly they're doing as far as technique. And I've recently seen a lot of people asking, hey, why don't, influencers tell you what they're doing better or give you more details or instruction? So I'm trying to give a little bit of happiness on every level. And I know that I have some advanced skills, and then I also know I have some very low-key intermediate skills. Again, I can't draw, so that puts me out of the running as far as any kind of artistic skill goes. But I am pretty good with the Prismacolor pencils and some polychromos. I know I don't use polys a lot in my drawing or the Derwent. I do use them often, so don't get me wrong. I will try to use polys in the future or even the Derwent brand to throw something different in. And I do have more upcoming color blends with the Prismas. And I would like to jump into doing some other color blends like with the polychromos, their Derwent line, the Arctics line, the Holbeins, the Caran d'Ache Luminance. I have so many years of color blends that I don't think I could get them all done at once. So I broke them down into groups, into full pages of groups of colors. And that's not even half of what I have. So I'm trying to throw out color blends that you wouldn't necessarily see every day. Okay, now, once you've done that, take your 996. And those areas where you have that shading should be kind of muddled at this point. So you should be able to, with a light pencil touch, add some of that right over the top like I'm doing here. I'm just using a very light touch, and it should glide right over those colors. Because what you're doing is you're just highlighting what you already have there. So you're not putting more in, you're highlighting at this point. So you're just following that dark undertone that you have, because you should still be able to see it. And it should be a little fainter because you blended. But those areas should also be a little bit darker on your paper. So all I'm doing is just kind of highlighting those shaded areas I put in, giving that cake some really cool shaded definition. So like the piece of cake looks more like a piece of cake. And if you notice, it doesn't really look purple either. It doesn't look black. It doesn't look purple. It just gives it enough of that right color. And if you find you got too much of that purple, take your chocolate and go ahead and give it a blend with your chocolate right over that dark, dark purple. So if you think it does look a little purpley, go ahead and hit it with your chocolate. You're not going to hide it. You're not going to dull it down like you would if you put the nectar over it. You're going to give it back that nice shine. You see how that works with the chocolate just going right over it? You'd be amazed at what you can do with different colors that you might not think make any sense, but they really work fabulous together as a blend. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of come up here a little bit and hit my corners where I had that little bit of shading of that deep color, and then right along this tip here of this berry, and a little bit down in the center. Not much, just a little bit. And then along this one, right along the top here, and maybe a little right here in this corner. I'm going to hit this corner again. I'm going to hit this corner again. And then I'm going to come around this edge. I'm going to do all the edges again. Get this one down here. Now remember, this portion can be a little bit darker because it's right up against the plate. Then I'm going to kind of get a little tiny bit here. You know, I thought about this right here, but it's definitely part of the plate. Okay, now take your chocolate if you need to and go over those little dark areas. You're basically just pulling it out and kind of smoothing it at this point. Smoothing those shading. And I don't know if you're like me when you're working a project. The colors that you use, you keep separate and you keep out so you can make a list. So if you need to go back and make changes or add color in somewhere, that you have it and you know which color you used. I definitely try to keep track of that every project. Because if I put them back in my holder, then I can sometimes get lost or I forget what color I've used. And that's terrible to do. So then you got to kind of wing it. It's not like I remember everything I've done on a project. People will ask me later, oh my gosh, what color did you use? And I'm like, I don't know. So it depends. Sometimes I write it down. Especially if it's something that came out really cool. I'll make little notes on the back of my picture so I know what I did. Because nothing's worse than forgetting. Because sometimes I want to come back and say, hey, how did I do that? What colors did I use to create that? So don't worry about making your color list like that, because it's for you, basically, not for everybody else. And I don't know about you, but I can't always remember the thousands upon thousands of color blends and how I got a certain color to look a certain way. Okay, so you have that done. And I'm going to take my 943, that final color here, where I put those initial little highlights in. I'm just putting it right back over. Kind of my finishing touch. Adding a little bit of those bright spots in there. I'm not doing anything crazy, just a little bit, throwing it over the top. Okay. So now take a look at your chocolate cake without me flinging my camera around. What do you think? That's some serious chocolate cake, right? You want to take a bite? I do. I want to take a big old bite. A big old fat bite. Like a little piggy right out of it. I think it's just yummy. Yummy cake. Okay, so we've got berries to do, right? I hope you got your 122 all sharpened up. What, you think you were going to get off the hook? And I was just going to do the chocolate cake and let it fly? Let's try to knock out some of these berries before my camera goes dead. So again, starting with this upper berry here, you see the little dashes and then the fat lines in between. I'm going in between the little dashes and using the fat part to put my red. So I'm doing a light coat of my 122. And I'm doing those little triangles again. So I'm following along the tip here, filling it in. As I go in, I'm kind of narrowing it down. I'm just sticking with how the artist had drew those images in there. And I know it's hard to see on, like I'm using the lighter version, but on this particular page, the artist gives you two prints, a light and a dark. And I chose to use the light image to do this picture. So it's kind of up to you what you want to choose, whether it's the light version or the dark version. But I did the light version here. I'm just kind of outlining the strawberry here. And then this part, I'm not going to do the whole area. I'm just going to do a corner here. Okay. And then, of course, you got this little inner bit. So I'm just going to outline it. That's it. Just outlined it. I see where I could go a little bit wider on some of these. Okay. Ooh, slippage. I'm going to go ahead and jump over here to this one too, since I have it. Now I see there's more shading on this one, so I'm going to try to follow that shading very carefully here. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just do the best you can to kind of make those little shapes in there. And I'm still using 122. It just looks darker because she has more shading on this side. I am going to follow that little line there. Just going in between. This one looks like it's a little wider here. And then we got this guy. And this one is going to be a little tricky because she's got dark and light right next to each other. So I'm just going to do a little bit. And then I'm going to do a little right here to kind of, there's that shading line there. Okay. Let's go ahead and do these bottom ones since we got the 122 out. You know, because this is that first color I always put down. Try not to make them too wide. I'm watching some movie called Man in the Moon. I think it's an older movie. It's pretty good, though. I've seen it a couple times. If you've not watched that one, it's kind of a tragic love story, but has a good ending. It's a cute movie anyway. Well, it starts out cute. Teenage drama. Doing this one. And then one more little one, I think, right here on this berry. Yep. And then I'm going to go right into this last one. And this little bit here looks a little mixed, so I'm going to try to see. Sometimes you got to kind of just work your shapes in there if you're not sure where those lines are. And that's what I'm doing here. It's a little bit wider here. And then right around here to outline that berry some. Again, I'm just trying to keep my little white spaces in the center there for now. It's basically what you're doing is the same as that top berry. I might make these a little lighter or a little darker because they're cooked inside the cake. We'll see as I start to lay in the colors. And I might use a different color order, just depending on what my colors are doing. So this one's got a little different of a pattern here. Okay, and we'll do this one here. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I think I will go. Let's grab our salmon. Just really lightly with your salmon, go in between your lines here. Let's start with that for your base on these berries. Go in between your red with a very light coat of your 1001, your salmon. And I'm going to go right over that line. So I'm not doing anything. I'm no blending. I'm just kind of mixing the color into the white space. Just to kind of give me a idea. I'm going to do each one. Because I'm trying to think, these are more baked into the cake. So although they're going to have some lighter areas, the berry should be a little more glistening or cooked. So it can be a little bit darker instead of brighter. But sometimes strawberries get really bright when you cook them. Like when you bake them in a pie, they get sometimes a brighter color. Like when you soak strawberries in sugar, they take on that really glistening appearance. But these are mixed in cake. So I don't think I'm necessarily going to get that real glistening appearance here. But I'm going to see what happens with this blend. The way I'm blending them, so to say, this time versus the top one. Same colors, but I might do it just a little different. So again, I'm just going over each berry. I'm just running this salmon over that line I did to outline that center bit. And I'm gently throwing color in this white place. I'm not using heavy pressure at all. Just enough to change my color from white to salmon. Okay, now I'm going to take my 924 and I'm going to go over my red bits. I really need a piece of paper here. Okay, I'm going to use this so I quit rubbing across my page. Because I'm going to start hand rubbing across my page. And that keeps me from rubbing my color out. So if you're like me, grab a piece of paper, a piece of parchment paper. Okay, I jumped right to 924 because this is a little bit of a darker red. So I'm just following through with my lines that I already put in with the 122. Trying to pay attention to my outline of my berry here. So I'm just gently putting that color in there because it's darker. And since these are more of a cooked berry, I think this might be better. Again, trying to keep that triangle shape up top. You might have to manipulate it a little bit by drawing a little triangle at the top like I am to keep that shape. I'm just kind of making a fine point. This one needs a little something. Okay, I'm going to do this one. Again, I'm just going around the edge of the berry here. And I'm going to hit that center line again, I think. Yep. That looks a little better with that deeper, darker red. And this one, I went right to the edge with it. Okay. Okay. It's kind of tricky to get those nice little triangle shapes in there. Outline the edge of my berry again here. Go underneath that filling. Oops. See what I did there? I boogered up. Okay. Now back to my imaginary triangles that you try to draw in. And again, I'm using light pressure to do this. I'm not pushing heavy, but I have a sharp tip again. You can tell when I start to get crazy because my tips will usually be a little more blunt. But if I start pushing heavy, I'll tell you. And most of the time, I never do heavy pressure. I find I don't need to. Sometimes I'll use heavy pressure if I'm doing a background that's really vast and of the same color. I'll start to put a little more pressure in there. But I do not like hand fatigue. I don't like hand cramps. And I find that if you push heavy, you are going to get crampy hands. And fast. So if you get crampy hands or you have arthritis like me, you might want to brush up on your light touch technique because it will benefit you. Especially with Prismacolors. They're so easy to use that even if you have arthritis, you should be able to do some work anyway. And I know, depending on the type of arthritis and how severe it is, it can be a challenge in its own. So there are certain varying degrees of arthritis as everything else. I have good days and bad days, and mine can get pretty uncomfortable in my hands. But I do find the more I use my hands, the less stiff they are, even with my arthritis. So some days my fingers will be really swollen, other days not so swollen. Just going to go around the edge of this berry. Trying to be careful not to this is a little bit wider here. Give it a little wider area. We'll do that last bit. Okay, we got one more over here. I'm gonna go around the berry really nicely here. Just following that line along the chocolate, and I am going to get these inner bits. Did I forget it on this one? Okay. I'll back to this last berry. Okay. We'll do the center part. Okay. And we're going to get this last little one here. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. Yeah, maybe a little bit more right here. All right. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so I think I will take my, let's grab my white. And I'm going to go over that peach with my white for now. Just a little bit. I want to kind of dull out that peach a little. Just a hair. And then right in the center. I'm not doing a lot. I'm just kind of mixing that peach. Yep, these are going to be definitely a little different. That little bit of white in there. Same colored pencils, different technique, which will result in a different color layout. Hopefully they come out a little bit darker than the one on top. And again, I'm not using a heavy pressure. I'm just kind of squeezing in some of this white over that salmon in between my wedges here. And then right in that center bit. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take my, let's go with that 926. Right over my little wedgies. Your 926 is that nice pinkish red. I find that it blends your colors pretty good when you're using different reds. It gives it more of that, that pinky red color. It's just a little different. Hey. Yep. Again, I'm not using heavy pressure. I'm just kind of throwing it on there and giving the small circle blend. Kind of mixing those colors. All right, there we go. Get over those center lines there a little bit. I'm going to do each one of these, and then I think I'm going to grab my, think about my 925, and then, actually, I think I'll grab my pink first, and then my 925. My brain is spinning now. I'm like, what to do. Again, you see, I'm not trying to make each little wedge perfect because it's not going to be perfect. Okay, let's round the edge a little bit. Okay. All right. Yep, I think I'm going to grab my 928. And with my 928 now, I'm going to blend over my red. Just like the above one we did with that 928. Do a nice light coat. Don't go real heavy because you want to keep your wedges underneath. But I'm doing it now because these berries are supposed to be more cooked. I'm putting a little in the center piece there. Again, I'm just doing a light coat right over top. And you can see it still retains my wedges without muddling them together because I'm not using heavy pressure. But I got that pink right over top the red. And I still got those nice lines. Oops. Little in that center there. Okay. And get your next one. right in that center bit as well. Okay, here we go. And get your last one there. Give those a nice, good, even mix. So now your peach that you laid underneath, it's got a little deeper of a peach with that pink. Make sure you get all your little spaces. And those little center bits for now. Right over top the white that you put in there. Okay, I'm going to grab my 1003. Those little bits in the center, I'm putting a little of that 1003 in there. Because again, remember, these are going to be a little darker because they're baked inside the cake. So in my opinion, they should be a little darker. So those bright white bits in the center won't necessarily be white. That's just how I see it. You can do them any way you like, but I see them as not so bright white after they've been cooked. Okay, now I'm going to take my 925 and I'm going to hit my wedges. Paying attention to the very tips of these wedges should be darker and lighter towards the center. So I'm mainly focusing on the top part of the wedge as I go here. If you want your berries to look as good as your cake, patience, grasshoppers. Okay. That nice rich color. Look at that, starting to really take shape with these baked in berries, huh? Little different than the upper one, but same concept. Just a different color order. Little different anyway. And again around this one. Okay, looking pretty good, I think. This bottom one here. Kind of go around this berry. Get each little wedge, focusing on the, again, on the tips here. I know I get a little quiet when I get thinking. Sorry. I could just repeat the same thing over and over like a broken record. That's no fun. Okay. Don't worry about them being all the same color either. Some can be a little lighter, some can be a little darker. That's all right. Because the strawberry, when you look at it, if you cut one open, it's not evenly colored everywhere. There's light spots, there's dark spots. So when you bake it in a cake, it's the same thing. It's going to be darker or lighter depending on where it's at on the cake, how ripe the berries were. So I think that's what gives them that unique look when you color them is, I think I'm going to put a little in here. Just around top. Cool beans. I think it's looking pretty snappy. I'm going to take my salmon. Yep. And I'm going over my dark red with my salmon, blending right into that pink. I'm going to do this center bit, right over that orangey red that we got in there. Going in between my lines, a nice good coat. Again, I'm keeping with my shapes, but I am kind of going over the red. So get down here, trying to get in all these little bits. All these nice even. I think it's looking pretty good. Starting to get that nice glistening look. I'm still seeing whites in my paper though, but I'm still getting that really pretty reddish orange with that pink and that salmon mixed together. I'm going to go right over that orangey bit here in the center with my salmon, because it's really not going to be white once it's cooked. So I'm not striving for that white core or that bright white spot in the center. Should be a little fleshy colored in my opinion. Okay. Get them right in between there and up over the red bits. Okay. Brush away a little bit of dust I had there. See? That looks pretty good. I'd so eat this cake right now if it was real. I think I wouldn't be able to help myself. Be like a little piglet. Can't resist a good chocolate cake. I like good chocolate. I don't like cheap chocolate. I like good chocolate. Sometimes I crave a candy bar, but, you know, just a cheap... I guess candy's not even cheap anymore. Bought one last week and it was like $3. I was like, what the heck? Since when is candy so darn expensive? It's junk food. That just blew me away. Like, groceries aren't expensive enough just to buy yourself a little treat. Crazy. I was like, good grief. I remember when I was a kid, we could buy penny candy. I have not seen penny candy anywhere for years. Like, they had things like Swedish fish, gummy bears, gumballs, lemon drops. You could buy $1 each or a penny each. You just go in and you can grab a little paper bag and you get as many as you want. You mix up your flavors, whatever flavor you like. I'm just going to go over this one just a little bit. So you can get Swedish fish, gummy bears, gumballs. You can just walk out of that store with 100 pieces of candy for $1. You can't do that today. It's very sad. Kids have missed out on some of the cool things, which I think you could still buy cheap candies. Retailers could do that if they wanted to, but it's just different. It's not the same as when we were kids. I mean, that was a treat for us when we were kids. Dad would give us 50 cents, take us to the little market down in the corner, and we could get a little bag of treats. It was a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to sharpen my 122. Got my 122 all perkied up. And I'm going to go over my wedges nice and evenly with my 122. Giving it that nice, bright, slick coat. Because we are just about getting our layers to the point where we're not going to be adding too much more. So you can see your darker contrast at the top. And then it fades out towards the bottom with a lighter color. It should be ever so subtle, though. Your color shouldn't be dramatically darker at the top. Just a little darker. If you got a nice, good blend of the different colors. So I've got this nice, beautiful coat of reds and pinks, darker reds. And I'm going around the edge of that berry. Look at that. That looks pretty tasty to me. Okay, and I'm going to get each and every berry nice. Try to define my shapes a little bit if I can. Probably not going to be perfect, but that's okay. I am trying to do this a little bit faster than the last one because my video was so long. But you can really see the detail at this point. And that sharp line going towards the center. That movie was funny. Sorry, it was a funny little part. Made me laugh. Okay, and now to the next. So you're basically going to want to do this for each little berry. Put your 122 in there as your top bright color. So you should have some areas where it's darker, some areas where it's lighter, as far as your red's concerned. Getting a nice, good coat in there. It's making it look nice and shiny and slick, like a sugared glassy berry. Like, you know, when you make strawberry shortcake and you make that sugar syrup for the strawberries to soak in. I don't know if you've all done that. We used to make fresh strawberry shortcake when I was little. And my mom would soak the sliced strawberries in this sweet sugared syrup she made. And it went over the fresh baked cake. It was so good. Fresh strawberries in the summer are the best. Go around this edge here. And this little guy right here. Getting that nice bright pop of color. Okay. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Let's try for that final pink in between here. Give a nice good layer of that pink in between your red wedges the best you can. If you smear a little bit of your red, it's all right, because at this point your page should be pretty much burnishing itself. I'm just going to hit each little wedge with a little more of this 928. And then I'm going to put in some shading, I think, and some highlighted areas. It's looking pretty good to me. Definitely a little bit different on the color blending here. But that's okay, because I wanted a little bit of a different look. Wanted these to be a little brighter, a little denser, like they've been baked in that cake. And I think I got that. Okay. And I am using a little bit of a medium light pressure, but I'm still not pushing heavy. I'm just trying to get a nice coat in between on those fleshy parts. So you can see how it's darkening up that flesh, which is what I want. Okay. Now I'm going to take my 1030, which is that raspberry color, and I'm going to kind of hit some of these points with that raspberry. Not all of them, just some of the ones where I think I want a little bit deeper of a shade around the berry and on some of the tips. So where it kind of meets that chocolate. And I'm not going to do all the tips or all those little triangles, just some of them, I think. But definitely go around the berry with it. Give it that contrast. A little bit there, not too dark around the filling. I'm going to do this little bit down here. I think I'll get some right in here at the bottom. Again, I'm not doing all of them. Just a few where I think it might have a little bit darker of a color. And let's do this guy here. That looks pretty good. I might take my salmon. Actually, I think I'm going to take my 118 a little bit and put a little of that 118 over top that center bit. Just really lightly, ever so slight, over those little center bits. I want it to be a little more orangey, like cooked. And then I'll take my 926, kind of go over it with my 926. That 926 over that orange is giving just what I was looking for. Because I don't want that center bit to be white anymore. I want it to look more cooked, more flesh-like. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Kind of going around that filling a little bit. Just those little spots where that filling touches the berry. I'm using my 926 just to kind of give it that little extra definition line there between the two layers. But you don't have to. I think that looks pretty snapping good. Hold on. What do you think? Now, it wasn't as complicated as the upper bits, but if you want to add some more contrast in there, you can definitely take like your 923 and you could brush up your lines a little bit, blending that darker in. I steered away from using it for the most part in these lower berries because I wanted them to look darker. I wanted them to have a more richer cooked look instead of the fresh cut one on the top. But if you want to, it's kind of your choice how you want your berries to look. So I don't see any seeds on the outsides of these berries, but if you need to, for purposes of brushing over your, hand rubbing, take your chocolate and brush up your cake where you think you might have rubbed some color or been too aggressive with the hand rub like I was. And you could fill in any little white specks that you see. I still can't fill in those little scratch marks that Gretel put in my paper because they're pretty deep. So that will take some handiwork by me off camera to try to accomplish that little goal. But if you, like I said, if you need to fill in some areas using your chocolate over what you've already done is the best choice. That way you're not losing your color layers underneath. You're not losing your shading. And if you do have some areas where you've lost some of your shading, 931 can brighten up instead of 996. 931 can put a little pop of that shading in there if you think your 996 isn't cutting it. So you can use your 931 and then hit it with your chocolate if you need to. It works just as good. And I know some people have more of a limited palette than others, so color choice will be kind of in your wheelhouse to pick what's right for you. Now, on the fleshy part of the cake here, if you think that's too light, you can always go back in like, I used my 118, I believe, to add some of these little dashes. You can always come in and add a few more. So where I've brushed over it with my hand, I'm just putting a couple more of those little dots in. I'm just dotting my pencil. Prismacolors are fun to use because when you get layers built up like this, you can do these little extra things. And it should go on so easily, should go over the paper. Okay? All right, you guys, I really hope you like the chocolate cake. I was so excited to show you this part. I think it looks really cool. What do you think? I'm pretty proud of my chocolate cake. Let me see if I can straighten my camera. Okay. Maybe my camera will hold still. All right, I'm pretty proud of that chocolate cake, and I think it looks pretty darn tasty. So you can go in and do some brush ups on it. We will come back in the very end after we finished everything and put some really fine details in. Nothing that you can't live without, just my little thing I do. And don't forget to do the left-hand side of this ribbon because I'm going to finish it before the next video. So do it just the same as we did on, the right side ribbon. Do the same as we did on the left side ribbon on your right-hand side ribbon because we're going to jump into the plate and fork next. All right, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Until next time.